The next topic we're going to go over right quick, or just chat about in general, is this is very technology based. It's kind of crazy to think that people are actually working on this. So this is potentially a worldwide catastrophe type situation if this isn't fixed or looked at or whatever. But it's data storage. So people might be like, data, whatever. But
yeah.
So
you don't think of it as a tangible thing, but really it takes up a lot of space to store a lot of data.
Right. So we're creating this video here. All of you are on social networking websites, and people creating tons of YouTube videos, and we're taking pictures, and we're doing all this stuff. And I like the fact. What was the fact about that? How much data was created in the last 2 years?
Yeah. So I want to say they say like in the last 2 years, more data has been created than all of history.
Yeah.
That's
nuts.
Insane.
So in 2 years, more than the entire history of the world.
Yeah.
And we're creating more data faster than even then.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start talking about some weird numbers and stuff like that. But anyway, what we're about to talk about is data storage in DNA. So like the DNA that make up, biology, your biological DNA, they're talking about doing data storage in DNA molecules. So yeah, they're actually
wrap your brain around that.
Yeah, they're thinking about crunching data into the DNA molecule. So, but before I talk about that, so humanity in general, about how fast we're creating data. JD said that we've created enough data in the last 2 years to be more than the years before, and that's going to start to increase. The population of the world's growing, and I mean, this is just a compounding type thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we create X amount of data this year. We're going to create more of that next year. But what about all this past data? It needs to be stored somewhere. So it's a potential problem that, think about YouTube, for example. Like, where are they sticking all of this data at? It's in these big warehouses and stuff. But what about all this data that's not used too often? Yeah. It's just the history of the world kind of thing. It's stored in things that, like a jump drive, or any kind of drive. But these things are made out of physical devices that are actually just deteriorating.
Right.
The things are deteriorating. So someone came up with the concept of, well, let's put the data inside of DNA. So, but anyway, so we're creating enough. So I'm going to talk about some things that is just crazy. But anyway, so we all know what a gigabyte is, right? So most computers have, X amount of gigabytes, but we're starting to get to the point where a normal computer, they'll have 1 to 2 terabytes. So a terabyte of information. So humanity per year, or at least the last year or so, creates 16 billion terabytes per year. 16 billion terabytes. That's 16 trillion gigabytes per year. So if you think about the space in your computer and how much you're saving on it, you probably don't use all of that, but everybody together is creating 16 trillion gigabytes. So that number, instead of, you went from gigabytes to terabytes. So the 16 billion is called a zettabyte. So it's 16 zettabytes of data that we created basically in the last year, which, that's crazy. Yeah. But it's said that by 2025 is going to be up to 160 zettabytes that's going to be created in 1 year.
That's where we'll start coming into problems of storage.
So that's definitely why the storage problem, it's a storage problem of like, holy crap, what are we going to do kind of thing. So anyway, so they basically say that all of this storage space, that you could take one zettabyte of data that might be on a hard drive, that weighs pounds or whatever, but that it only takes 1 gram of DNA to store 1 zettabyte of data. So they could compress it into DNA that, it stores this stuff in
which blows my mind, because I have no clue how that is done.
Right,
which is a very interesting topic.
So yeah, we definitely are not going out into how this is done, because we don't know, and it'd probably blow our mind if we tried to understand it. But anyway, just know that in our day and age, that this is actually happening. That people are trying to put data in DNA.
Yeah, which I think they proved that it could be done.
Yeah, it could definitely be done.
But they can't get it to the capacity to which they say scientifically it can be done. Like they only maybe half of the amount of data that they put in DNA, but they say that it could be more.
Right.
And I think another thing that they're having trouble with is the cost to do it. That is just, it costs so much money to compress it into the DNA, but eventually they're going to just start,
Yeah, it was the same thing like with computers back in the day. Computer was the size of a bedroom, but now the computer is down to the size of our phones in not that long of time, and technology is increasing exponentially. So from a 800,000 price point maybe to compress it into this, it's going to be way down in a handful of years, especially 2025 when it's becoming a big problem. But so Microsoft is actually they're already researching and studying and have plans in place to do and store some of their data into DNA storage for their cloud services. So this is being worked on right now, DNA data storage, which is just crazy. And like JD said, it's just it's more of a speed problem at this point. They can't condense it down, and then it's actually slower for them to decode it to be able to read it. So I think they said right now it's only they could only read it at about 400 bytes per second. That's slow, 400 bytes per second. It needs to be at 100 megabytes per second, like basically the high-speed internet these days. It needs to be able to unravel it.
Not up to that speed yet.
So, but anyway, I guess the reading it for some data that we might not necessarily need it. So think about how much data was lost from, let's just say 10,000 years ago. They had cave paintings and, hieroglyphics and all this different stuff that this data was just lost because it was carved in stone or written on paper.
Deteriorated.
And it just completely deteriorated. So
we
don't have to really worry about reading it so much at this point. But if we could just store it and know that we could, just shoot it off into space or something like that, that it just exists.
Didn't they say that it's going to last like up to however many thousand years within the DNA, where something that's stored
a hard drive.
on a hard drive.
Technically, don't know how long it can last.
Right.
Yeah.
So can I like sell some of my DNA to store?
Yeah, we might be able to sell our DNA. No, I think they're synthesize. They actually synthesize or create the DNA to be able to do it, which
is another crazy.
Whatever. But anyway, so on that point, and just the last point. Supposedly there is a college student out of Italy who is working on the next thing to progress DNA, the reading, and it's done with bacteria. I don't know. It's able to store and then read it using bacteria. So I don't know.
Sounds like he might win a Nobel Prize.
Yeah, so that's crazy. But anyway, so that's the end of the show. I hope you enjoyed. We covered a handful of things. Please let us know what you think. What topics you maybe want to hear and learn more about. We'll essentially cover anything in the business world or things like DNA storage that's going to be a part of business in the future. So give us any feedback, comments, things you would like to see, and thanks for watching. We'll chat and see y'all later. All right, thanks.
Thanks.